Welcome to Coast2Coast Pinball presents Roger Sharpe Pinball, The Interviews. This is episode number 2 in a podcast series that we are conducting with Roger Sharpe about the interviews, playing you the interviews, discussing these interviews that Roger conducted in the 1970s leading up to his book, Pinball. I think tonight's a very interesting and very special interview that we feature with Sam Stern. Roger interviewed Sam Stern in 1975 at the Williams Pinball Factory. Obviously, the name Stern to many people is pinball today in the modern day. Stern Pinball, being run by Sam's son Gary Stern, is the largest manufacturer of pinball machines today. Learning Sam Stern's history and how he started as a fairly humble operator of different coin-op machines and vending machines, and eventually became half owner of Williams Pinball, finally full owner of Williams Pinball, worked for Bally, started his own company with Gary, Stern Electronics. Hearing the story and hearing Roger talk to Sam in the 1970s is really special. It's really amazing. I hope you enjoy it. I had a great time talking to Roger about Sam Stern and learning a little bit with him before we play the interview. So thank you very much for listening. Here's Roger Sharpe. All right, back tonight we have Mr. Roger Sharpe as we get into episode number 2 of Roger Sharpe Pinball, The Interviews. How are you tonight, Roger?
I'm good. Thank you for asking.
Good. So,
and you?
I'm excellent. We are jumping into the second interview in this series of these amazing tapes that you have from the interviews you did back in the 70s. And I thought that the natural next step after talking about Harry Williams and hearing your conversation with Harry was to move on to Sam Stern, because Sam Stern, I think, is such an interesting and such an important person in the history of pinball, and he leads us all the way right into today. And Stern Pinball and Gary Stern, the largest pinball manufacturer in the world, still going today. It's just really an amazing story when you start diving into this. He takes us all the way back to like the early 1930s. What can you tell me about this interview? Where were you? When was it? How it's a fairly short interview. It's about 30 minutes, and he seems like he's fairly busy. This was at Williams during his tenure at Williams. Where were you guys? In his office, you said?
We were in his office. It was James Hamilton and myself. And in fact, James actually gets a question in or two during the interview. And for those who have seen the book, the picture of Sam on the phone, that was one of the breaks where I think he was making a call to find out the name of a game. But yes, it was absolutely and totally in his office at Williams, 1975. So it was prior to the actual release of Space Mission that was coming up. And it's interesting because as we've kind of talked about doing this and going back through the files and what have you, it got me wondering, what order did I do these things? You know, did I do Harry Williams first? Did I do Sam first? Alvin? Any and all of the people that I interviewed, I wish that I could go back in time and remember exactly and precisely in what order. But I have to believe that the conversation would have been one of my earlier ones, just based on some of the give and take, some of the knowledge that I had at that point in time, and some of the other knowledge that was yet to be uncovered. So it was the trip to Chicago that James and I took specifically for the book was to do a round robin of meetings / interviews with anybody and everybody, depending on their schedule, because I know we did multiple trips back and forth. So again, 1975, when? I'm trying to think if the MOA show, which was the major industry show, was in the fall, probably it had to be somewhere around that time frame, the fall of 75.
Do you remember if Sam was open to doing an interview? Was he surprised you wanted to do an interview? What was that like, getting the time with him?
At that point in time, I believe that Sam was knowledgeable of my existence, as well as what I was hoping to achieve with a pinball book. And some of that undoubtedly would have come, I believe, unless he remembers differently, that my meeting with Gary Stern at L. Simon, their distributor in New York, probably prompted Sam's openness and willingness for me to come into Williams, meet with him, meet with many of the other folks that were there, tour the plant, and kind of take it from there. And then again, trying to work it out within his schedule. As you pointed out, it's not as lengthy an interview as it was with Harry. It was, good fortune to have, I think, about a half hour of his time that we did have.
A lot of people listening to this podcast will have either been to the modern day Stern Pinball Factory in Elk Grove Village or have seen at least factory tour videos. How would you compare the Williams factory in the mid 1970s to what we see now at the Stern Pinball Factory?
Wow, it's a great question. I suppose, number one, being overwhelmed by seeing an actual pinball factory. I don't want to say that it isn't as inspiring as what Stern Pinball has today. Many of the same steps and procedures in manufacturing a pinball machine still exist. I think just the vastness, if you will, of the Williams factory at 3401 North California Avenue is the one part that would probably stay with me, not the least of which was the same feeling that I had visiting Bally. A little less so in terms of Chicago Coin, and probably comparable to Gottlieb, only because they had moved into a new facility at that point in time. The rotisseries for the play fields and the production assembly line and all the rest of it, to me, walking in was just like, oh my God. I mean, the first thing was walking in the front door. Monique handled the switchboard, which, for anybody that wants to go back to the time of Lily Tomlin doing her literally plugging in those, I won't call them wires, but those connections for phones. There was this huge elaborate setup in the front. And you had the front hallway where I lived for a number of years when I started working at Williams. And the minute you opened up the door, the cacophony of the sound of pinball was just mind-blowing. It really was. You went from, somewhat corporate silence and quiet to, behind this door, put your headphones on because you're going to get blasted. So, I mean, that's one of the recollections, I guess, that I still have.
One of the things that we were talking about with Sam Stern before we started recording is, when you look at his history and how he seized opportunity at so many different steps, whether it was buying nearly half of Williams, whether it was buying the rest of Williams, later on Chicago Gaming or Chicago Coin. Talk to me just a little bit about how Sam really influenced pinball as a business, because he's clearly has a passion for the games. You can hear this guy. He's so thrilled about getting to work on the games and play the games and excited about the games. But really, what strikes me is what a savvy businessman he was.
Oh, totally and completely. A genuine person. I mean, that's what I can say. I mean, not having done any business dealings with him, but, having talked to enough people, there was an incredible amount of respect and admiration for Sam as a person, as well as a businessman. His word, his bond. I guess in some respects, having started up through the ranks to really establish himself, he really did have a love and a passion for pinball, which admittedly, I don't think that anybody would ever say differently. Through osmosis or whatever else, Gary has the same. This is his life. This is what defines him. And I think that Sam was very proud of all that he was able to achieve, gathering, great people around him to help run his business, being very much hands-on, not to the point of micromanaging, but really having an appreciation of every step in the process, from the point of working with vendors to get materials, to manufacturing, to creating long-lasting, firm relationships with customers, distributors, to being conscious and conscientious of player, all the way through. I think that's a rarity today. I think that most people tend to be, I won't say isolated, but tend to limit the scope of whatever they may be involved with, especially if they're working for a large company, that this is my area. And, whatever happens outside, my area is maybe dependent or interdependent on what I'm able to do, but I'm done with my task. Now let's move on to the next. And I think with Sam, it was ever present, and that commitment and the commitment to quality, to excellence, to being sensitive to, sensitivity to price point. What's the price of play? How long should a game play? How much does it cost to build a game? Where are we going? What should we be doing? So Sam was very much a person of fundamentals, and I really admired, who he was and what he was about, and again, how gracious he was with myself and with James,
I think
my photographer.
I think it's interesting that you say how he was so strong in his fundamentals, because when you look at pinball in the last 20 years and the really, the big decline, and somehow Gary, through Data East Sega Stern, keeps it going at a certain level to be there for the the big ramp back up. And I don't think Gary could possibly survive the decline if he didn't have that fundamental sort of business acumen and sensibilities about how to stay going even in bad times.
Absolutely. And I think if nothing else, Gary was grounded in those business principles. And more importantly, because it's somewhat interesting, you're not working in a vacuum when it comes to pinball machines. And I think that Sam absolutely understood that. You're part of an industry, and that industry comprises, nowadays video games, but back when it was some novelty equipment and jukeboxes, to being aware of not only the marketplace within the context of the industry, but more importantly, the audience. Where is this equipment going? And with Gary, specifically, you have to add on a whole new element, which Sam was somewhat resistant to, the home buyer, collector, enthusiast, hobbyist.
Yet he didn't see a way they could build a game for the home at this time in the 70s.
No, not for the price point. And again, obviously everything is all relative, but back then the cost of a machine compared to the cost of a car was not as closely aligned as it is today, or the down payment of a house. Everything is all, relative, but still it was a lot of money back then to buy a pinball machine for a couple $1,000s. That was a significant investment. And especially, and I know that Sam was a major proponent of it, as was the late, great Joe Dillon, one of the more major influencers in the coin-operated amusement game industry as a salesman. But the price per play. How do you get by on a nickel? On a dime? We have to go to a quarter. Well, we'll do 3 plays for a quarter. I mean, there was always this understanding that somehow there had to be an increase for the price of play, and to be able to give back sufficient entertainment value to justify that investment on the part of the player.
Can you explain something that Sam says, and everyone will hear this in the interview, when you're discussing the idea of a home game? One of the reasons he says you probably couldn't do it is all of the cheating angles that they build into the games. And I thought that was a really interesting term. And I think I know what that means. I think it was the idea that these games have to, end at some point, so we build in certain features to the game to end the ball. Is that what he's talking about?
I think that's part of it. I think also it's a question of just materials to build. So the physical structure of a pinball machine and whatever those cheating angles might be, because we never got into really the specifics, I just kind of took it as a blanket phrase and assumed, probably the way that maybe you understood it, took it to mean, well, we move posts around, and we have all of these other aspects in terms of game design to ensure that we're going to hit that 1.5 minute gameplay, or that 3-minute gameplay. So those are some of the cheats, if you will, that go into it. Where for a home game, obviously it's much less problematic. Person has it in their home, we don't care if they play one game and it takes them an hour.
Yep.
Because they've already made that purchase. But God forbid that happens on a location. So I think that that's more so, at least that's what I took from the interview, as opposed to we would use different wood or a different type of tempered glass, whatever those cheats and whatever cutting of corners there might have been in terms of parts, physical parts, and the structure of the game.
Sam attributes his company to creating the long flipper.
Yes.
So that he says it's really interesting. He says it wasn't for pinball; it was for a novelty game originally that just had too much space.
Right.
I think that's really interesting.
And I think it's probably for a baseball game or whatever. But yeah, the longer flipper became something, and people can look at it today and look back at the older machines. Williams always had a longer flipper, which admittedly meant a couple of different things. And I don't want to go off topic in terms of Sam's interview, but I remember, having a situation where they were doing testing. God, this does go back to around that time of the mid-'70s. I always said that the Gottlieb flipper was best. Well, it's not. I said, yes, it is. You can line it up better to make shots in the center and the stroke or whatever by having a thicker bat, if you will. No. And they did some strength testing. I was like, no, our flipper is stronger. It's like, yeah, but it's weaker at its longest point as well as its shortest point in terms of accuracy and power. And I think maybe I got into some of that when I was initially looking at working on what eventually became Baracora, but wanting to have something that had the same power dynamic across the entire face of the flipper. And I think from Sam's standpoint, it did change things fundamentally in terms of many of the shots. Take a look at the games from that era of, I want to say, late 70s to probably around the late 60s, probably to the late 70s. You will see that the majority of Gottlieb games, designs, playfields, have very short targets and areas to shoot for. Really did not get into kind of like long, sweeping outside lanes. You have longer, sweeping shots with the Williams layouts compared to the Gottlieb games. Gottlieb games, and I hate to say it this way because I don't mean it as a negative, might appear to be more claustrophobic in regard to features and access points from that late 60s era on through to the mid to late 70s, where Williams games, by and large, had much longer shots to go for, which in many ways I think compensated for the longer flipper.
Makes
if
sense.
It makes any sense at all to anybody listening to this.
No, I totally understand that. That's great. I like when you ask Sam, what was the best Williams game as he's talking about it, and it's the question. I know Gary gets it now all the time, and Gary jumps right to the whatever game we're building right now. That's or right. Next.
Yep.
And obviously, as a businessman, that is absolutely always the answer. But Sam was interesting. He of course said Space Mission because I think Space Mission was about to come out.
Yep.
But he wanted to talk about how he really thought that the game with the roulette wheel was the best one. And he actually calls someone named Jack on the phone, which I think is so interesting to hear. And he's trying to remember the name of it, and he gets told it's Go-Go.
Right, a Go-Go.
So a Go-Go. So is, in your opinion, what's a better game, Space Mission or a Go-Go?
Oh, Space Mission, absolutely. Yeah, if we're comparing the two. But he did like the roulette wheel. It's funny because initially there was a roulette wheel underneath the main play field on Baracora when it was known as Las Vegas, because I thought that was kind of a neat thing and hadn't been done in a number of years. But if you take a look at many of the designs during Sam's reign at Williams, it's fascinating to me to see the broad assortment of layouts. And by that, I mean not necessarily the conventional, as it was called, Italian bottom of return lanes leading to flippers. So you had Spanish eyes and you had some other features where it was like, God, this is kind of off kilter. Let's see if we like this. That Williams as a company was willing to, I won't say experiment, but willing to give you different looks, as opposed to, okay, let me take a look from above the flippers, the rest of the 3/4 of the playfield to see what's different, because I already know that I don't have to look down at the bottom quarter, because that's going to be the same. And
Yeah.
I think that, Sam's creativity, and actually, I know he points it out in the interview, being one of the primary folks to help create the drop target. And I think as he recounts, and now people are doing multiple drop targets. They're doing banks of them. It's like,
Banks of drop targets. Yeah.
right. Absolutely. But
Yeah.
I think that there is truly a sense of fulfillment, if you will, in being able to see much of the things that he wound up seeing and experiencing, going back to the days of World Series, talking about Harry in the early days on through, and then again, my personal affection for Harry, knowing and seeing what Sam initially did and what Gary did later, of bringing Harry back into the fold so that we could actually experience some of his games from a totally different era, and saying that he still had the spark in him. So I think for Sam, you have somebody that is really kind of a historical cornerstone to the entire industry.
Absolutely.
And I think
Absolutely.
that his influence back then, even to now, remains.
Yes.
Truly one of the greats.
Yep. I just to wrap up here, I think it was interesting, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. You brought up to Sam that you appreciated sort of the very strong sense of family at some of the pinball companies, and he really jumps quickly into how everybody's great. Everybody in the industry is awesome. He likes everyone. He's friends with them. He has appreciation for everyone, and it was just very interesting because today, in not just pinball but in many industries, I don't know that we still have that.
We don't, and I'll bring it up even more so. Back then, before everybody became somewhat more corporate in the late 70s, acquisitions with Gulf and Western and Columbia Pictures and all the rest of it, it really was a very tight-knit industry. It was a friendly rivalry. And one of the classic examples, and I know that we'll get into it at some future point, was Sam Ginsberg at Chicago Coin interrupting our interview because he was calling for some parts, and he was calling up Williams to see if they had some extra parts for a particular game. And that's how it was. Everybody was there to give everybody else a helping hand. Oh, you need something? Here, we have extra. Or what can we do to help? And I think that friendly rivalry helped really establish the foundation for the pinball industry to endure all that it needed to, with all of the public outcry over those previous decades and all the resistance going forward until pinball could become much more established as a recognized and accepted form of leisure time entertainment without all of the strings attached. And I think that probably Sam back then understood that more so than anyone else, just because of all of his prior experiences beginning as an operator on through, to know that together we stand, and divided, maybe we don't stand as firmly on the ground as we might.
I wound up putting out pinball machines and jukeboxes. And that's at the start of it.
When did you start with ballet? Weren't you ballet for a while?
Oh, well, that was...
or was that much later?
Much later.
How did the progression go?
Let's see, it was in 1939. Or 1938, in that area, somewhere in 37 to 38 area. I was very friendly with a cousin of mine that was a principal in Sunray Drug Company. And I was operating some jukeboxes. Well, prior to that, in 1934, I think it was, I went to the jobbing of pinball machines. used machines, and we had somebody fix them up, and I sold them at a store in Philadelphia. And from that, I went into operating the jukeboxes. And in 1938, I think it was, a cousin of mine that was with Sunray Drug Company got together, and we bought a company called Keystone Music Company that operated about 300 or 400 jukeboxes. Then I was partners with them, and in 1939 I took on Rockola distributorship for the jukeboxes.
With David Rockola?
Yeah. And in 1940, right before the war, I think we bought a vending machine, cigarette machine company. People that were operating cigarette machines were in financial trouble. I think they were in bankruptcy. I think we bought into bankruptcy. We had 250 cigarette machines. And we built it up till we had about 700 jukeboxes and about 1,500 cigarette vending machines. And we also went at that time into the operating of candy machines right before the war in 1940. And during the war, when we couldn't get cigarettes...
What was the name of the company?
Scott Cross Company and Keystone Vending Company. Mm-hmm. Scott Cross Company was the distributing company, and Keystone Vending Company was the operating company. And we had quite a few cigarette machines. We probably had a lot, 1,500 or so. And during the war, we couldn't get cigarettes. We got a hold of a jobber, the name of Bregman, I think it was. We sold him 25% of the vending route, and he agreed to supply us with all the cigarettes we needed. So we had all the cigarettes during the war. And in 1946, I think it was, we bought 50% or 49% of Williams from Harry Williams. We sold off Scott Cross Company to this cousin of mine. He bought it with somebody else, and he eventually sold it. We sold all the routes to the men that were collecting them. I sold my interest in Keystone Vending to Bregman and my cousin. And we bought 49% of Williams. And just my cousin and I bought 49% of Williams. And then in 1959, we bought Williams 51% of Williams, Harry Williams 51% of Williams. And we merged in with a company called Sunray Drug Company. Well, at that time, they had brought it up. They changed the name to Consolidated Sunray, I think it was. And let's get this chain of events right. We bought a coffee vending machine company through Williams, which wasn't too successful. We had to put a lot of money in it, and Sunray didn't have the money to put into it. Mm. And in somewhere around 1960, we got a rescission with a Sunray Drug, and we were back on our own. And we had to take the loss, and we sold the coffee machine to Rockola. And then we started to go ahead just on pinball machines. And in 1964, we merged it in with Seabird in May of '64, and I think September of '64 we bought United Manufacturing, and then moved Williams into this 3401 California building where United used to be.
That's great. And you've been here ever since?
No, I had a contract, 5-year contract in '64, and it ran out in May of '69. And I left at that time. In July of '69, I went with Bally until July of 70. I went back to Seaburg to run Williams again. And I've been here ever since.
Let me ask you, what man in the industry impressed you the most?
Well, you mean in the manufacturing or the...
In all facets of the pinball industry per se. What were the great minds and the great personalities that you met that stand out?
Well, Dave Gottlieb was one of the pioneers. He was one of the smartest men in the business, I think.
What kind of man was he? Besides a hard driving person.
He was a hard driving guy.
Stood his ground.
He knew the business forwards and backwards. He was very charitable. He was very well, highly thought of because of his charities and himself. He always had a funny story to tell. But the most important thing, he really knew the pinball machine business, forwards and backwards. He really knew it. And then you have Bill O'Donnell with Bally. He's one of the nicest people you want to meet. He knows the business. He's a great salesman. And he knows the business more from the gaming machine end, I would think, in my opinion. But he knows the pinball, the flipper and amusement game business as well. I think he's more knowledgeable of all facets of the business. Most of us only know one part of it. He's in both.
Was everybody fairly friendly in the early days? Because
everyone was very friendly. Yeah, I think everyone was very friendly then and very friendly now. We had, in those days, we had an association, the coin machine industries, with all the manufacturers, and there were very many more manufacturers. Mm-hmm. And the jukebox manufacturers were in the CMI, and the game manufacturers were in it. And there was we used to meet once a week or once a month, I don't remember which. And everybody aired their problems. And we all contributed to the operation of this coin machine industries. We went everywhere to see where we can help legalize and educate the public to what a pinball machine was.
And what it wasn't.
And what it wasn't.
Did you have any idea that it would take off the way that it did? Or that it would sustain itself?
No, no idea. Actually, in 1960 or 61, a lot of people thought the pinball machine business was finished.
Really?
It was down in that area, somewhere in that area. Sales were down, production was down.
What was it? Was it a question of design, or was it a question of just marketing?
I don't know. I don't know what the reason was, because it took off all of a sudden. It started to grow in 62 and 64. It looked like, well, who knew? And then from there on in, it just grew in leaps and bounds. To a point where Williams was doing about 6 million on pinball machines and now doing close to 30 million. And mostly pinball machine business.
Right.
So it really grew beyond anyone's expectations.
Are you pleased with it?
Oh yeah, it's a very interesting business.
Would you change anything that you've done?
I wouldn't, other than maybe I wouldn't sell the company. I'd hold on to it, but there's a lot of education has to be done. I'm glad to see young people come into it. Donald has his son and son-in-law in it, young men that have educations. The Gottliebs have young men in it. They have Judd Weinberg that came out of another industry, and I'm sure he likes his business. Mm-hmm. And he's very knowledgeable. He knows how to run a business. Actually, I think all the people in this business happen to be pretty good, nice people and good businessmen.
It's interesting that everything is it's very family-oriented, which is nice. It makes it almost like a closed-knit.
Yeah, well, even my son, Gary, he went to college, majored in accounting, worked for one of the national accounting firms during the summer, worked for us during the summer, then went to Northwestern Law School, graduated, practiced law for 2 years, and likes us better. He's here with us, and he loves this. And there's a real good education, with a great background in accounting and law, but prefers the pinball machine business. Now, in Philadelphia, when I was there were a lot of professional people. I got into the flipper game business, operating machines, pharmacists, and attorneys,
Well, in the beginning.
Yeah. And they were still in it, as far as I know. A lot of them are still in it. They're still alive. These fellows got old since then.
When was it most exciting to you? In the beginning, when you were still trying to struggle, or now when you're trying to sustain and grow?
Well, there was a different excitement each time. There was a lot of excitement in growing. There's a lot of excitement now in going further, because it looks like there's still growth. And there's a lot of changes coming in.
What do you foresee?
I think within the next year or two, if we can make something that is reliable as electromechanical, I think you'll see solid-state pinball machines.
Right.
But I hope nobody rushes into it too fast, because solid-state on TV has proven that there's a lot of service on these machines, which we can't stand on flipper games. You know, we have income-producing equipment. Right. And when it's down, the fellow no money goes in the machine. So we have to make sure that they work. And the only way our distributors can get paid, and us through them getting paid, is by the operator having enough money to pay us. So it's very important that these machines work.
Yeah. Well, service is a problem.
The proof has been in these TV-type games that there's more service than should be. But the costs were high on these components, and they're coming down. And you may be able to get good components now for what you were buying poor components for years ago. And I think the TV people just push these games out too fast. And they just didn't worry about the service on them. Now they were making enough money that the operator put up with a lot of the service. And they'd go down for 2-3 days, it wouldn't be so bad. But now they're getting down to normal, and you can't afford to have that service.
Where do you think your potential markets lie? New markets? Do you think consumer, private usage, or do you want to stay away from that? Only
I don't think we're qualified to make consumer pinball machines. Our costs are too high. We put too much in them, and our technology is such that we don't know how to produce them at these cheap prices.
Would it mean necessarily bringing the price down, or would it mean stabilizing it?
I think for home use, for consumer item, you have to have a much cheaper pinball machine. You have to mold your cabinets and mold your play fields, and you can't give them all the features that we give when we're accustomed to giving. I don't think our engineers could build a machine without all the features and cheating angles that we have to cover. And in a home unit, you don't need all that. I'm sure people at home are not going to cheat themselves.
Right.
And most of them are non-coin operated for home use. And we're accustomed to coin operated equipment. Now maybe some of our competitors will be able to do it, but I don't foresee it. If we can do it, it'd be great. It'd be great, and we'd have an additional income, but I can't foresee it.
What about foreign market?
The foreign market is strong.
How did it start? Why the fascination with pinballs in Europe?
Well, the people, you have your fascination in these countries. They have very little gambling. The people never work there like they did here. They have long lunch periods, and you take a 2-hour lunch period. It doesn't take 2 hours to eat. We do it in 30 minutes. But foreigners like to eat leisurely and then walk around and play a pinball machine for a half hour. And so it was much stronger. Geez, it started way back in the 50s. We started to ship machines in the 50s. We didn't pay too much attention to the market. We didn't go over there much, and one of our competitors got very strong in Europe, and we started to look at it, and I started to travel to Europe quite a bit, and decided to appoint distributors in Europe in the mid-50s. And since then, it's just grown.
What are the best countries in Europe?
Well, Germany and France, I guess, are still the two largest users of pinball machines.
Do they have basically the same type of setup in terms of arcades, per se?
France, I think, has more arcades. England has quite a bit of arcades, but they came into it later. But England became a strong market. Then the gaming came in there, and it's the only place that I know of where gaming machines never actually hurt the flipper games to any degree. Now, maybe the flipper game would have grown a lot stronger in England if they wouldn't permit the gaming machines. That we don't know. But
what do you mean by gaming machines?
well, they have payout machines in England.
They do.
But they actually pay out money. Now, they have them in Germany, too, but they're limited there. The payout is limited, and they don't have all the arcades with these gaming machines, and even then, they can only permit two in the location. But if you go into England into an arcade, you'll see maybe 100 gaming machines in there.
Are these the old bingo-type games?
No, they're more slot machine-type games. Slot machines in cabinets, slot machines as we know them. Then there's slot machines in a cabinet they call console cabinets. Now, they have a limit on their payout, but people still like to play those. And in England they have penny pushers where you just throw pennies in and something just pushes them out. And if you can get them and knock them off. There's all kinds of games in England, gaming type games.
Let me ask you, what do you think was the best innovation to the industry from standpoint of pinball?
The action of the kick-out hole.
Really?
Yeah. See, the original pinball machine, all it had was little holes and nails. And then they started to put the kick-out hole on it. The first action was a kick-out hole, where the ball would go in a hole and kick out again.
Who did that? Was that Harry?
I think Harry Williams innovated that. I think he was a starter of that.
That wasn't in Contact, was it?
I think it was. I think Contact was the first game with it. I think Harry Williams did that. He was operated some machines in California, but nobody was making too many models. And I understand that he would just redo some of the faces of them. That's how he got into it. And then he had to work out his own ideas on it. He put the kick-out hole on with batteries. There was no electric at that time. He didn't have transformers. So he had to use batteries. And that was the start of the electronics in the game. Then there was your free play was an innovation. I think that was brought out by Genko and Keeney or somebody brought that thing out. So they had a free play.
Right.
I don't remember who that was actually. I know Genko was.
I thought it was Harry.
It may have been Harry Williams too with the free play. He innovated so many things. It's hard to say.
He really did, didn't he?
Yeah, he's actually one of the old pioneers of the industry.
Yeah. He was telling me about a gate that he had on one of the original pin games. Went down that center hole.
Yeah, and they would go
the gate, and the gate would lift up, and you could get more than one ball. You could get all 10 balls on the one part.
Right.
And most of them didn't have that before.
No, he had subways where the ball would go under the playfield and come up somewhere else again. There's all kinds of crazy gimmicks in those days. But that was the only action you had. So you didn't have jet bumpers. You didn't have flippers.
Right.
You didn't have the cyclonic kickers where the rubbers, where the ball hits a rubber and it kicks away. You didn't have all those things.
So kick-out holes.
I think that was the first action that was put on the board.
What do you think about flippers? Did it appreciably change your marketing standpoint?
It changed the entire game. It lengthened the play on a game. Way back, we used to have about a minute and a quarter game with the flippers and the action bumpers. Became a 3.5 minute game. And the economy just can't stand that length of play. And that's where we came up with the idea of going to 3 balls. And 3 ball is actually a better game.
Right.
It plays better. It's more fun to play a 3-ball game than a 5-ball game. And we've been pushing 3-ball play for a long time. Now we're pushing 25-cent play because with the costs going up the way they are, there's absolutely no way that you can operate under 25 cents. Everything else has gone up. And you used to pay 11 cents to go to a movie, now you pay $3 or something. And pinball machines. There's still some operators operating at a dime or 2 for a quarter, and some on 5 ball. It's just impossible for them to make any money that way. And contrary to what most people think, pinball machine is not doesn't make fortunes.
Right.
You know, with pinball machine. That's why I want to get the 3 ball. Machine is played certain hours, for maybe 3-4 hours at a time. And that being the case, you have to get all your play in those few hours. And at 5 balls, it was just...
Everybody standing around, not being able to play.
Didn't play enough on the game. Took too long. Now, most of the world even is on 3 ball play. As I said before, it's more interesting, it's more fun to play, and it's faster.
Do you enjoy playing yourself?
Yeah, I'm always playing it. I mean, I just came in from the engineering playing the game. And they're keeping the scores I make and the features I make.
That's great. Do you get a chance to say, I think we should do this, or I think we should do that on a game?
Oh, sure. In fact, Harry Williams used to say, I have game sense. There isn't a game that we don't make a lot of changes on, but actually a game is not one person's game. The designer designs it. I get in, I make some changes on most cases, and everybody plays the game, and they come in with a little suggestion, and the designer takes it, usually if he thinks it's good.
Right.
And that's the evolution of a game.
How long does it take usually, planning stage?
Oh,
from paper to whitewood and to finished product?
Well, it takes a while to get it on paper, but from paper to whitewood to finished product could be about 8 weeks, 8-9 weeks.
Just in plotting out?
Yeah, well, they draw it on paper. We do anyhow, not everybody does. We put it on a paper, we make a whitewood model, and then there's changes that have to be made. The changes are not made until you find out how it plays.
The whitewood is just the layout of the components of what everything's going to look like on the playing field.
Right. Then you wire it up and play it. And then you make your changes.
On the whitewood, or do you have to
redo
another whitewood?
No, you do it right on the whitewood. You plug holes, you drill new holes, and you change the whitewood around so it plays the way you want it. And then you wire the whole game up as a complete game on the screen board. And then you play that, and you have very little change after that. Sometimes you do have.
Who decides name and graphics, motif? Or is that a combination?
Everybody does. It gets in on that. They all get in on a name, and we have an artist that does the artwork, and we all look at it, and everybody looks at it, and they make suggestions, and they make changes, and the artist changes colors or wording or design, and then they still screen it complete.
Because I know Space Mission is just fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Graphically, it's beautiful.
Right.
And the colors.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think, in terms of playing field features, do you think there's anything that will catch anybody by surprise? Like bumpers did when bumpers came out.
There's always that possibility. We like to be the one to do it. We came out with the original drop targets, but they were individual. They were one at a time. And we've been copied with a bank of drop targets. We came out with the swinging target. Well, I don't think anyone's copied that yet. We came out with a turning thing in the center, which you've seen on some of our games, like Triple Action and so on, and that's been copied. We made the first long flipper. Now everybody makes a long flipper. And we did it by accident. It wasn't even on a pinball machine. It was a novelty game. We just had a little too much space, so we made a longer flipper. We liked it so much that we put it on all our games, on the flipper games. But we first made it on a novelty type game. So, and then other people have come out with other ideas that we have copied, other gimmicks. We're all looking to come out with something different that makes the play a little different. It makes it more interesting, gives you a little more action.
Especially with 3-ball. With 3-ball, I imagine that it's going to have to be
designed differently.
Well, we've been on 3-ball for quite a while. I think all of us have been on an adjustment for 3-ball for quite a while. We stopped it once, and then we had to go right back to it.
What do you think was the best game that Williams made?
Oh, geez, that's hard to say. in all these years, it's just hard to say which is your best game. Right now, we think Space Mission is going to be our best game, but when we made, what was the name of the one with the roulette wheel? We had made one with the roulette wheel. We thought that was our best game.
Oh, Suspense?
The one before that. Suspense was later. Our first one with the roulette wheel. I forgot the name of the darn thing. That was quite a few years ago. What's the name of that game? This one. I helped design it. I can't remember the
I'm
name.
trying to think what it was.
Let me talk to Jack a minute. Hey, what was the name of our first game with a roulette wheel on the bottom? Oh, yeah, Go-Go. Yeah, Go-Go. Okay, yeah. Go-Go. We thought that was the best game. And we've made games since then that we think were much better. And they have been much better, I think. But your best game, each year, you have a winner that comes out as your best game.
Right.
And the amount of games you make doesn't naturally say it was the best game because you made more of them. It may have been just that the market was ready and it was so different for a minute. Like that a Go-Go had a roulette wheel at the bottom that was never been used before. And that was designed by one of our men here. And
Well, Apollo was a great game.
Apollo was a great game. There's so
Where you
many.
had the rocket and you had the ball shooting down.
Apollo was a great game. Jubilee was a great game. But which is the greatest, you don't know.
Let me ask you a question. What happened with Travel Time? As a concept being the only game to come out based on time on a clock.
It was a very, very spotty game. It was good in some areas and bad in others.
Was it from a mechanical standpoint?
No, it was from the feature standpoint of time. Instead of the amount of balls, in other words, usually you get 3 balls, 5 balls, the game's over. This you played until you ran out of time. And it didn't seem the player was ready for that. In some areas they liked it, some areas they didn't. And we can't build a game just for particular areas. We have to build something that's acceptable all over.
I know
I
you
still
incorporated-
think you may see time games come back again.
Yeah, so do I.
When did that come out?
About 3 years ago.
Was that all?
Then you came out with Jive Time, which had basically the same structure on the playing field.
But it wasn't on time.
No, it wasn't. I'm just saying you incorporated the same
Yeah. Wasn't on time though.
kick-out hole in the middle
Yeah.
with the same wheel.
Well, you get a lot of repeat on layouts sometimes. So part of it's repeat, and part of it isn't.
Right.
Right now we're all using these swinging targets, and you don't know where you're going to put them, but they like them, so we're using them. I
That's
think
how
the first
I-
that ever did that was Gottlieb, was the first one with it.
Well, they had something on Roller Coaster, which was just the one arm that went around, and that's what your score was. Wherever you hit it,
Mm-hmm.
if you hit it and it was at 300, or it landed at 300, that was how many points you had.
But you never know what the public's going to like. I mean, I always said the game was like a movie. You have to have a theme and action. If you don't have the theme and action, you don't have a game. If you have one without the other, you don't have a game.
There's no way you can really do research based on the past.
No way at all. What you think was bad in the past could be good today.
Does it surprise you sometimes? If a designer comes in with an old idea and says, geez, didn't we do that 30 years ago?
Yeah, it does surprise you, but you know what? But one time we say attitude, geez, you can't do that. It was done so many years ago, it wasn't any good. Today you let them do it. And you try to find out whether it's good or not when you put it out for field test.
Right, well, you have a test mark.
That's the only way you can find out. The cash box tells the story. And what was bad or good years ago, whoever told me you would be able to have, we put a swinging target on a game back in the 60s. And this is 76, and we're using it again on Space Mission.
Right. Well, Swinger was a great game.
Yeah, we've used that target quite off and on for the past 10 or 12 years. And things don't usually last that long.
Right.
But,
Other than Sun Picture.
I better go.
Oh,
I got an appointment at 12 o'clock now.
I want to thank Roger Sharpe I want to thank the entire Stern family, of course, and I want to thank you for listening and taking part in this special podcast series, Roger Sharpe Pinball, the interviews. Until next time, this is Nate Shivers, Coast to Coast Pinball. Take care of yourselves.